Our countdown to kickoff continues. The kickoff of 49ers training camp. We've got only about a week and a half left. So today I wanted to start to get a little bit more technical, start to get into some X's and O's of what might change, particularly at the most important position, quarterback. I know we've been talking a lot about Trey Lance's supposed arm fatigue, just a bunch of crap. So why don't we get to some of the real stuff today? And today I think it's fitting to talk about what Trey Lance is actually going to run under Kyle Shanahan, what Kyle is going to be able to call offensively for the 49ers as opposed to what he might have called in years prior with Jimmy Garoppolo. And a lot of that hinges on the frequency that Kyle Shanahan runs play action. It's one of his staples, bread and butter of the 49ers offense whenever they've been playing well. So that's something that I want to go over today. So hello, everybody, and welcome. It's Thursday. That means the weekend is close. After the weekend, we've got one more full week without any NFL training camp or without 49ers training camp. I know some other teams will have their rookies report early, but the 49ers will be the week after that. They're going to see the report date as July 26th, first practice July 27th, and then we can hit the ground running. I know a lot of the July content has been centered around potential Jimmy Garoppolo trade action and then obviously shooting down some of these ridiculous Trey Lance rumors. I just can't wait for the season because we're going to be able to have conversations like the one that I'm about to have more often, way more often. And look what I'm going to put up on the screen a little bit later. This is a little preview. Hit me with your 49ers QB questions. So if you have any good questions about the 49ers QB situation, hell, I'll even answer some contractual ones, some trade ones for Garoppolo if you really want me to. But if you have any really, really good schematic 49ers quarterback questions, stuff about physical capabilities, how they might fit with Shanahan, get them ready because I'm going to get to them at the end of this video. And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we get going here. So, operative question, will we see an increasing play action rate as the 49ers move from Garoppolo to Trey Lance? I'm going to base this off of my Twitter thread the other day. So why don't we open this up and check it out, and we could kind of read through this and then go through some of the main bullet points one by one. Let's take a look right here. This is what I wrote. Will be interesting to see the rate at which Kyle Shanahan calls play action with Trey Lance. We saw an interesting dip in play action rate with Jimmy Garoppolo last season. The 49ers play action rate with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021 was 26.3%. So about a quarter of the time, they ran the play fake with Garoppolo under center in 2021. But you compare that with their rate in 2020 when Garoppolo played only part of the season due to the high ankle sprain or sprains, depending on how you want to look at that re-aggravation against the Seattle Seahawks. The play action rate was nearly 33%, 32.6. And then in 2019, Garoppolo's sole truly full season starting for the 49ers, the play action rate was even higher at 33.3%. And then I go on to say that Garoppolo was excellent off play action in the 2019 season. He ranked number 4 when you looked at just play action snaps by PFF grade, only on the play action plays. And he averaged 10.2 yards per attempt, which was also in the top 5 in NFL off play action in 2019. A huge part of what made that year tick for the 49ers was how good Garoppolo was on play action. But that efficiency declined in 2021. They weren't nearly as good off play fakes in 21, and they also called less of them. So the big question is, what will Trey Lance's sweet spot be as far as play action rate? I'm going to go back to that thread here in a little bit, but first, let's establish a couple things. For Kyle Shanahan, his bread and butter has long been setting the pass up with the run, right? He runs outside zone. I think the run game is going to be more multiple for the 49ers this year, to be honest, with Anthony Lynn, an inside zone specialist kind of guy. He's a power scheme mastermind. Anthony Lynn's made a name for himself around the league with his ability to scheme some of those more interior runs. 49ers have heavier running backs this season. They might have a heavier offensive line with Aaron Banks at left guard. I think when you add it all up, the 49ers are going to be more multiple in their rushing attack this season. Now, this is a Shanahan team, so they're never going to get away from the outside zone. But I think they just want to diversify the backbone of this offense. So Shanahan, offensive backbone, has been, always will be the run. The 49ers were one of 2 or 3 teams last year, and they've been one of 2 or 3 teams in each of Shanahan's seasons to run the football more than they pass it. That will not change under Trey Lance. And here's why. That run game is the bedrock for play action. Play action is obviously when you fake the handoff, you fake the run action, probably even more importantly, your blockers, your offensive linemen up front are going to fake run blocking, and then you're going to spring into a pass play. So that's why the tight end, that's why Kyle Juszczyk in the 49ers offense is such an important piece, because those guys have to be able to sell the run block before they deploy on a pass pattern, and that's where Kyle Shanahan can make hay. That's where the 49ers quarterback can make hay downfield. So Shanahan loves to call play action. He does it at nearly the highest rate in the league in years where the 49ers are calling it a lot. You saw with Garoppolo in 2019, 33% of the time. Now, this is one place where the 49ers tried to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it worked decently well while Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. But Jimmy came over from the Patriots. Remember, he wasn't a quarterback that the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan drafted. He wasn't a hand-picked guy for the 49ers offense. He, in a way, fell into their laps when Bill Belichick made a phone call in 2017, right before Halloween, and said, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo, my backup quarterback to Tom Brady, is available to you in a trade. Second-round pick, take it or leave it. 49ers decided to send a second rounder to New England. I don't think they regret it at all. They've been to a Super Bowl, to an NFC championship. When Jimmy has been healthy, the 49ers offense has clicked. When Jimmy's been healthy, which is 2019 and most of 2021, the 49ers have actually led the league in explosive pass rate. So Garoppolo's done well with the skill set that he has, which in the 49ers offense, given their weaponry, given what Kyle likes to design, has been setting up yards after the catch. So how do they set up those yards after the catch? Well, in 2019, they set those yards after the catch up very frequently with play action at that 33% rate. But the thing is that Garoppolo, coming from New England, which was always more of a spread attack, you saw a lot of action in the shotgun where it's harder to actually run play action, would utilize the quick release. You'd scan the field out of the gun, go to a slot receiver, go to whoever got open. You'd spread it out just like Brady played all those years in New England, like Brady still plays in Tampa Bay. Not as much under center stuff, right? Shanahan, on the other hand, because he's a run-first coach, is going to be asking for a lot more under center alignment. So when Jimmy Garoppolo came over to the 49ers in 2017, that was the biggest thing he had to pick up. He had to pick up lining up under center, really not similar to what they did the majority of the time in New England, not similar at all to what he did in college at Eastern Illinois, where they just ran essentially call it the run and shoot, but it was a variation of the air raid. Came over from Baylor with their coach Dino Babers. He had to learn something new. He had to go under center, and on play action, you take the snap, you look away from the defense because you're faking the handoff, and then you have to turn your head back around and you have to pick the defense back up. They call it reacquiring the defense. So Garoppolo had to learn to more frequently reacquire the defense because that's what you do after the fake. And it's not that easy because it's a whole different thing stylistically. So the 49ers kind of were on the edge of their seats throughout that 2017 5-game run. Jimmy, they adapted the offense to fit Jimmy more than Jimmy adapted to fit them. They didn't have nearly as high of a play action rate down the stretch in 2017. It was more snap and fire, human jugs machine from Jimmy Garoppolo. He was hurt in 2018, ACL tear, so we really didn't see what the 49ers truly had in store that season. But then we got to that 2019 year where he was finally fully healthy, and that's when the play action rate went up. It was near the highest in the league right here, 33.3%. A third of the time, Kyle Shanahan was running play action. And guess what? Jimmy Garoppolo was doing a good job with it. Again, right here, Garoppolo was excellent off play action in that 2019 season. He ranked number 4 in PFF grade, 10.2 yards per attempt. So all was well. Obviously, all wasn't well in 2020 when they ran a lot of play action, but Garoppolo was hurt. And then all of a sudden, what happened in 2021? We saw a significant dip in play action rate to only 26%. And there are a couple things, and this is where I'm going to go through the rest of the Twitter thread for the theory. By the way, you could subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Lombardi himself is where it's at. And you could obviously like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. But the simple theory for me, why did the 49ers dip in play action rate from 33% to 26%? And in a way, they dipped even more severely as the season went along because It was just as high early, but it was around that time where they played the Rams and won on Monday Night Football where you saw Garoppolo just move exclusively to the shotgun, and they started scrapping the play action altogether. Well, simple theory is that the 49ers needed to save the season. And I have this right here. We can highlight this. You could read this part. And to salvage the season, they went back to Garoppolo's strengths. And there are several reasons why they're in position to have to salvage the season. Obviously, they weren't playing as well early on. They had a lot of injuries, especially the running back position. So it was harder to establish that running backbone. So you go to the play action, right? Because that's where Garoppolo can just sit back there out of the gun. You go away from the play action, I guess I should say. You could sit back there, go out of the gun, scan the release, go for the quick release. Boom. Trey Lance, presumably the starting quarterback this season, was a tailor-made Kyle Shanahan pick. And that's what I wrote a little bit further on in that thread. And we'll open that sucker back up here in a little bit as we go through this. Garoppolo wasn't a tailor-made Shanahan pick. He fell into their laps. They adapted to him as much as he adapted to them. I mean, it was a mutually beneficial agreement. I think it worked well for the 49ers. But we know Shanahan. He always longs to get his own guy, his own moldable clay in there. And Trey Lance ran a whole lot of pro style, under center, play action stuff, both in Marshall, Minnesota, his hometown, and in North Dakota State, where he played college. North Dakota State FCS school is known under Randy Hedberg, the quarterback's coach there, who developed Carson Wentz as well. Easton Stick after him. He's a backup now in the NFL. They are known for running a lot of pro-style concepts, a lot of turn your back to the defense, reacquire the signal out of play action. Shanahan loved that about Trey Lance. That's why he liked Lance more than Mac Jones, who didn't line up under center a whole lot, didn't run a lot of play action in Alabama. That's why he liked Trey Lance over a guy like Justin Fields, because he had the physical capabilities to be a complete star, high ceiling, but maybe even more importantly, he had shown proficiency with some of the pro-style play-action-based concepts that Kyle Shanahan really likes. So my theory, and this answers the question down at the bottom, is I think the 49ers start running more play-action with Trey Lance as their quarterback again, because Lance is Shanahan's tailor-made pick, thanks largely to that pro-style background. Last season, the 49ers went as extreme as this. This is the 3 weeks after the 49ers were at their worst, I think, after they're 3-5. So they beat the Rams and they beat the Jaguars. They beat the Vikings. Garoppolo was operating out of the shotgun 96% of the time in those 3 weeks as the 49ers righted the ship with 3 straight wins. Prior to that, he was working out of the shotgun 66% of the time. Remember, 33% play action rate in 2019. It's all, I mean, I know that it's not a perfect division between no shotgun, and play action. But in general, when you're out of the gun, you're probably not running play action, right? So the 49ers were 66% of the time out of the gun throughout the first part of the season. Then they started losing. They're 3-5. The running backs all hurt. They have to turn the season around. Garoppolo moves to out of the gun 96% of the time, almost exclusively. And he caught fire over those 3 weeks. He was PFF's highest graded passer, with Mac Jones being number 2. That's funny. Over that 3-week stretch. Look at Justin Fields in that 3-week stretch. He also played well. So the bottom line is that the 49ers went to a situation where they, for whatever reason, lack of running backs, wanting to get Jimmy comfortable, desperation, whatever you want to call it, they went back to his strengths, and those strengths were very different than what the 49ers right here had run with Kyle Shanahan as their coach over his 5 years in charge. And that was a much higher play action rate. So I theorized, could it have been tied to the 49ers injuries at running back? Of course, this change could have been tied to the injuries at running back. But that doesn't mean that it had nothing to do with the quarterback. When the 49ers were leaking oil in the backfield, Shanahan presumably wanted Garoppolo in his most natural throwing element to compensate, and that was the shotgun. And my final conclusion here was, I think all of the tea leaves tell us that Shanahan will want to re-up his play action rate with Trey Lance. He drafted a moldable pro-style quarterback for a reason, and the 49ers bulked up the running back room for a reason. Point blank, this offense has been at its most sustainable best whenever play action has fired. Trey's athleticism, I think, makes Kyle want to use him off the play fakes, because off play fakes, you can run some bootlegs. Also, Kyle's going to want to run some zone read stuff. Kyle said this. I'm going to pull up this video. I don't have it right now, but in, I think 2017, Kyle was probably, I'm sure he was. I was back covering the team back then. He was way more transparent and open about what he likes to call offensively because he was a new head coach. 49ers sucked back then. People weren't scrutinizing everything he said at these press conferences. There's a really good clip from back in 2017 when he talks about what he would do with a more mobile quarterback. And there's going to be more options on the table, obviously. And I think some of that read stuff, the zone read stuff, which Kyle Shanahan talked about, is now on the table with Trey Lance. But at the end of the day, the zone read can be the spine for some sort of play action, right? Something that fools the defense into thinking that you're going to run the football and you end up passing. And the 49ers offense might be more volatile. And in fact, I expect it to have greater volatility in 2022. After all, Trey Lance is going to be a first-year starter. He's going to be a first-year starter who, has FCS experience and 2 games of starting at the NFL level. There are going to be growing pains. There's probably going to be volatility. There's probably going to be inconsistency. I charted it throughout all of his last training camp, for example, last year. It was tough for the 49ers to move the chains with Trey Lance. It's going to get a lot easier as he gets better. But that volatility is still going to be there, especially early in his career. But you know what? I think the 49ers are okay with that. Because if they could complement that volatility, which means some 3-and-outs here and there, maybe a higher 3-and-out rate, maybe more drives that just go nowhere, maybe a few turnovers. The 49ers want them to take care of the ball, obviously. But if they can take that volatility and make sure that they have the good end of it, make sure they have some kill shots in there, some of those play fakes, some of those, utilizations of both Lance's legs and his big arm downfield, well, then this offense can produce some points. And the main key to remember is that the locomotive of this 49ers team, especially over, I think, the first half of the season, maybe even the whole season, is anticipated to be their defense. This might be the deepest 49ers defense that we've seen so far in the Shanahan era. I think they're really banking on getting back into the top 3. Big difference between a top 2, top 3 defense and a top 10 defense, which is what the 49ers ended up with last year. If they can get back in that top 3, if the special teams can be decent, it gives Trey Lance runway and it gives the 49ers some leeway to be volatile offensively at the start of the year. But I think one thing they really want to go for are those kill shots with Trey Lance. And the play fakes are how Kyle gets there. So he can unleash that portion of his offense. He can begin calling those plays at a higher rate again because it might suit Trey Lance's skill set better. So anyway, hit me with your 49ers quarterback questions. I'm going to get to some of these right now. Sub to the channel, obviously, but 49ers QB questions. I want to get to some of these. And Quinn Price, I'm going to go latest questions to and start going backtracking from there. Yes, the athletic offensive line supports play action as well. The thing that athletic offensive line supports the most is the run blocking, right? Which is what the 49ers have gone for throughout the entirety of Shanahan's tenure. They're not going to be as great in anchor down pass protection, but it's a smoke and mirrors concept in a way. If you sell the run blocks as an offensive line, you take some sting out of the pass rushers. They're not going to be pinning their ears back and going straight after the QB. They're going to be hesitant coming off of the ball. So if you execute correctly, both from a play calling perspective and a disguise perspective at the line of scrimmage, you can actually get to a point where those guys up front are helping the cause, where they're helping diffuse the opposing pass rush. And yes, that does help play action because if you got a bunch of huge overweight dudes that aren't a threat to run block as well, the defense probably is going to respect the play fake nearly as much. All right, let's look. I'm going to scroll up. Questions. All right, I promised that I answer them. Should the 49ers trade Garoppolo to Seattle? I think the 49ers should do whatever's best from them from a cost-benefit analysis perspective. I think that every team, every prospective suitor for Jimmy Garoppolo is on the table for the 49ers. But the Seahawks may have to pay a higher price because they're the Seahawks. They're in the division. But I like to say every man has his price. I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have a price in mind if Seattle is the one that wants to go get Jimmy Garoppolo. And I do think it's higher than other prospective suitors. Now, Seattle, I don't think, would go out and trade for Jimmy Garoppolo until they get desperate sometime in the middle of August, potentially, if Drew Lock is not the answer. But if Seattle's tanking, then I don't think they go for this at all. So it's just a question of what Seattle really wants at the quarterback position and how soon they might want it. Because, Seattle could be one of those teams that the price could be so high for them that it's not worth it. They can say, we'll wait this out. Maybe the 49ers will release Jimmy Garoppolo. Then we can make a move to sign him. But if they need him sooner, there is some value to having a quarterback on your roster during training camp, obviously, to pick up the offense. If they need him sooner, if they're operating within a competitive mindset that we better be able to hit the ground running week one because we think we're contenders, even though I know a lot of analysts would laugh at that given the roster exodus that Seattle's seen. If that's what Seattle wants, they may trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, and they may have to pay a higher price from the 49ers perspective. Same questioner, Harold. Is it beneficial for the 49ers to keep Jimmy G on the roster? It doesn't hurt right now. Like for now, it doesn't hurt. As we speak right now, Jimmy Garoppolo is not costing the 49ers anything in terms of opportunity cost. The cap hit, $24 million, fits. They got $5 million in space. They need to re-sign Debo and Bosa. They can do it right now because they're not going to increase their 2022 cap hits all too much unless they really want to. And the money's not guaranteed for Jimmy Garoppolo. It wouldn't become guaranteed until August 30th, if and when he makes the 53-man roster. And at that point, okay, you start thinking about the financial cost. Because if it is guaranteed and you can't get rid of him, at that point, you don't free up as much money as you could have possibly freed up. Because remember, unused cap space rolls over from year to year. So at the moment, the 49ers, right now, they're like a quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, fittingly, they're like a quarterback. Pass rush is coming. They're rolling out of the pocket. They're buying time. Defense isn't anywhere close yet. The pass rushers, Aaron Donald, he's going to be converging on August 30th. So by then, the 49ers are probably going to have to make a decision. They could decide to eat it. They decide to keep Jimmy Garoppolo at that point. It would cost them something for sure. How much? I don't know, because they could renegotiate his deal. They could also trade him a couple weeks into the season, even if, as a vested veteran, some of his renegotiated deal becomes guaranteed. It will depend on what the 49ers want, what they think is best for the football team entering the regular season. And guess what? The 53-man roster cut down is still 6 to 7 weeks away. And the 49ers can use training camp to evaluate where they are with Trey Lance, where they are in the QB room, while simultaneously fielding offers for Jimmy Garoppolo, simultaneously gauging that situation. And come August 30th, it might be a different truth than it is right now. Right now, it's a muddled truth for the 49ers. So multiple things will be happening at once. There are a lot of variables at play. It's a complicated situation, but the 49ers want to bolster their quarterback room as much as possible at as efficient of a price as possible. And there comes a point when Jimmy Garoppolo is too expensive to keep alongside Trey Lance, where the price is not worth it for the 49ers. Will they hit that point this year, even after renegotiation potentially? I don't know, right? And the opportunity cost might be too great if they get offered too much from another team. We don't know what's going to happen. It's okay to say we don't know. That's how fluid this situation is, and that's why we need to look at this with all possibilities moving forward. But we do know plan A. There's plan A, there's plan B, there's plan C. Plan A for the 49ers is to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, hand the keys to Trey Lance, pocket the $24 million in savings that you would get from, and also pocket the trade capital that you'd get from parting ways with Jimmy Garoppolo in such a manner, and then have that money to either roll over into 2023 or have that money for a potential big trade deadline acquisition in this 2022 season. So the options are all on the table for the 49ers. We just have to be patient to see what they actually do, because there has been no downside to the way that they've treated this situation so far. All right, let's see some more questions. Sorry, I missed a lot here. That was a long one as answered. Is McGlinchey the biggest question on the 49ers due to his injury last season? He's a huge question. I think Trey Lance is the biggest question, though, right? I get the question. I'm a big proponent, believer in the notion that people are way too lost in the woods talking about the salary cap, the quarterback situation, Debo Samuel, contract, all this, and they're not talking about the 49ers offensive line, whose play is going to make or break this season with 2 new starters and McGlinchey coming back. So I'm totally in that school of thought. I totally get it. But if we're talking about biggest question, it's going to be Lance. But let's not underestimate the importance of the offensive line. And part of that is Mike McGlinchey returning from a torn quad and returning well from a torn quad. Because if he doesn't return well from a torn quad, oh boy, you got Aaron Banks, new starter at left guard. Jake Brendel probably going to be started at center. McGlinchey's got to show up this year because you need at least 3 new guys to show up if you count McGlinchey in there since he was out last season. One of those guys doesn't come through, especially the player on the right side who's working against some of the best edge rushers in football, right tackle. You're probably going to be in a world of hurt if you're Trey Lance in your opening season. What do you think is the optimal price for Jimmy? Well, it just depends. Like the market could evolve in any which way, right? We could get news on a Deshaun Watson suspension that's like he's indefinitely suspended, but minimum of 1 year. Leaves the Browns completely screwed. And that could come down on the first day of training camp at the same time that a quarterback tears his ACL somewhere and the Seahawks realize that, oh boy, we don't want to deal with Drew Lock. Boom. All of a sudden you have 3 teams who really badly want a starting quarterback. And in that case, you'd have a potential bidding war for Jimmy Garoppolo. That's like, you're asking optimal best case scenario for the 49ers. Well, if that happens, you probably get a higher pick for him in that situation, right? Especially if he comes out of 49ers training camp first couple of days and is showing some nice zip on his passes, back from that shoulder injury, even in live action. At that point, you get more for him. But you could also have Watson suspended for only 6 games. Seattle decides to tank, so they want Drew Lock as their quarterback, and nobody gets hurt over the course of training camp. And at that point, there might not be a market beyond a lower round pick and then a repackaging of the deal, right? So it's going to vary in between those and maybe even fall somewhere in the middle depending on demand that's created throughout the course of training camp. The main point, though, is that we absolutely just don't know what's going to happen. And we know that the 49ers aren't really, in a hurry to do anything with Garoppolo until August 30th because none of his money is currently guaranteed. So you hold on to the potential asset and see what happens around the rest of the league. All right. On a team committed to running, the shotgun Jimmy would be gold. But if they're committed to running, you want to run play fakes. And, I get it. The 49ers probably abandoned the play action for numerous reasons because it was tough for them to run the football when all the backs were hurt. And that's a big, big part of why Deebo Samuel moved into the offensive backfield from receiver last year. They need that spine of the running game. And they unfortunately didn't have it there during the tough portion of the season right there in the middle when they were dropping the 3 and 5, but they got it back when Deebo moved. They made the adjustment, Jimmy back into the shotgun, out of the gun 96% of the time for those 3 straight wins. I mean, the 49ers did a lot right to turn the season around, and they had to make some serious adjustments to do it. I mean, 2021 was a season of adjustments. Talk about the divisional playoffs against Green Bay. It was a game of adjustments. You could look at the defensive side of the football. Devontae Adams has, 4 or 5 catches through the first couple drives. They just stonewall him, shut him down the rest of the game. DeMeco Ryans puts on a clinic of disguised double-team coverage against Devontae Adams. And the 49ers, went on their merry way to the NFC Championship game. So adjusting well was a theme of the 2021 season. And the 49ers are going to have to do so again here in 2022. Mike says, I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy is cut if he waits out in free agency for an opportunity into the season. Oh, if he's cut, that he'd wait in free agency. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but he's going to want to get his money sooner rather than later. But I guess if he's cut, that means there's not an opening at the time, right? And if there's not an opening, that means that nobody's probably going to turn around and sign a free agent for all too much money. So it's more likely that guys get hurt during the regular season when guys are getting hit and stuff than in training camp when they're just wearing those red jerseys at practice. So if that's the case, somebody gets hurt, somebody badly needs a quarterback, they could sign Jimmy Garoppolo for bigger money during the season. Totally possible. Also totally possible that the 49ers hang on to him into the season for that very reason. They've carved out the cap room by restructuring Armstead and Kittle. And they like a deep quarterback room with Garoppolo and Lance. Crazier things have happened in 49ers history, no less. Crazier things have happened with the 2 quarterbacks. So I wouldn't rule anything out. I think the 49ers aren't ruling anything out. Again, it's plan A, plan B, plan C. plan A being the most likely, something opens up and the 49ers move Jimmy Garoppolo, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, and the 49ers have said this. Cutting Garoppolo and getting nothing out of him would be a big loss. It would be a big loss. You got an above-average quarterback who is still under team contract for one more season, and you like quarterback depth. I mean, if you're somebody who's followed the 49ers, you realize that 2018 was torpedoed due to a QB injury because the guys behind Garoppolo weren't good enough. 22 was torpedoed due to a QB injury because the guys behind Garoppolo weren't good enough. If Lance gets hurt and there's a huge drop-off again, and, even right now, there's even more unknown about Lance, but I'm assuming he's going to be fine. He's going to be good. But if he gets hurt, which he did a couple times last year, you fall off a cliff again with a good roster. So there is a benefit to having a deep quarterback room. There was a benefit to having a deep quarterback room last year. It's just about how much is that going to cost, right? So if you're just going to cut Garoppolo and let go of all the potential benefits of a deep quarterback room, iron sharpens iron kind of situation, you better get something in return. And if you don't, I don't think it's the most efficient use of resources, the most efficient way possible. And I think the 49ers realize that, which is why they're buying as much time as they possibly can with this Garoppolo situation that didn't quite go the way they wanted to this offseason because he had to undergo the shoulder surgery. So the injuries seem to always be the problem with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they were a problem again this offseason in the saga and the attempt to trade him. They did spend a lot to get Trey. Whether or not they spent too much is something that we just can't answer at this point. I mean, if he ends up taking them to some Super Bowl titles, multiple, then you won't say that they traded too much. It's a question, it's a debate that just can't be answered at this time. I think a trade where they have to eat some of the money is a bigger loss. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Niners have a Super Bowl team. Jimmy G can be useful, worst case scenario, as a backup. And it's a fair point. And it's one that the 49ers have constantly said, is possible. We can carry Jimmy. But they also have emphasized that it's unlikely. So we shall see. If Trey hits, the cost won't matter. You were right. If Trey hits, the cost won't matter. That's what it comes down to. Jimmy was best when playing in a rhythm. Hopes Trey smokes the defenses in a rhythm. Yes, and this is a point that I made today on social media. Jimmy was really good and proficient with the short game. The 49ers led the league year after year, 2019 and 2020, league year after healthy year for Jimmy Garoppolo. The 49ers led the league in yards after the catch per reception. Credit goes to Shanahan. Big credit to Shanahan. Credit goes to the types of receivers the 49ers have. Guys, these maul people, usually from a physical perspective, and Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, right? Juwan Jennings got in on the party. Credit also goes to the quarterback, though, because the short game is not automatic. A lot of people consider it to be automatic. If it were automatic, the 49ers would have won a whole lot more games with QBs not named Jimmy Garoppolo. Because it's not just about setting up yards after the catch at any time. It's about setting them up at the right time, converting third downs, moving the chains, putting yourself in position to score, then actually scoring when those chances arise. And Garoppolo orchestrated that really well, right? The numbers don't lie. The offensive production doesn't lie. 2019, 2021, when he was mostly healthy, the 49ers had a good offense and they moved the football. Jimmy got into rhythm more often than he didn't. That's not discounting some of his weaknesses, not discounting the interceptions, but we have aggregate efficiency numbers to look at. He played efficient football. 49ers went a long way in both of those healthy seasons for a reason. And one of the reasons was they got decent quarterback play. But the success moving forward of Trey Lance is not guaranteed in some of the realms that Jimmy actually performed really well in. And the short game is the critical realm. The short game matters so much in setting up the yak, in overcoming an offensive line that isn't necessarily geared toward pass protection, right? It's so important that the timing and the execution happens in a cohesive way up front, that Trey Lance isn't getting balls batted down, that he's making the consistently right decision at the line, that his release is quick enough so that it sets guys up. Completion or no completion, sometimes, a completion doesn't mean the play was successful. The release has to be quick enough and the ball has to be on the money to the point where a receiver can catch and go. Because if the release is a little bit off, defensive back has a chance to converge and the ball isn't completely on the money, it doesn't matter if it's complete because the guy's getting, Deebo Samuel's getting tackled 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage. So a 2-yard reception should have been a 10-yard reception or more because we know what Deebo can do when he's in the open field. So Lance has got to develop a rhythm in the short game for the 49ers to be able to keep the ball and, just keep the line moving on offense. All right, guys, thanks so much. Jerry said, let them compete. What do you think, David? I don't think that this is something that is not in Kyle Shanahan's mind. Let's put it that way. I think that if the 49ers still have both of these guys on the roster at the start of training camp, they will let them compete. Now, will Trey Lance be the guy getting all the first team snaps because the 49ers want to move forward? Possibly. So, it wasn't much of a competition last year, right? Jimmy got all the first team snaps. Maybe it's an inverse of that. Or maybe the 49ers say, hey, we want to make sure that we showcase Jimmy at the very least, so maybe we're going to split these snaps. At that point, though, you start to get into the existential debate of, well, you want Trey Lance to get as much work as humanly possible in camp. Is Garoppolo taking away from that? And you have to decide, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? Where's Trey at? How much do you put into this 2022 season? It can get a little bit messy. And that's what's going to make it so fascinating, right, moving forward, because we don't know how Kyle is going to handle this situation if a trade has not yet presented itself by the time the camp starts in a week and a half. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the strategy. But I think, they've telegraphed they really want to trade him. They've telegraphed that this is Trey's starting spot for this 2022 season. So I think that's what's going to be happening. I don't know if Jimmy's passed the physical. He has been throwing, but to pass the physical, he's got to be back at the team facility. And I don't know if he's been back at the team facility. They're off right now. It's July. So it might not be something that can happen until he's back in the facility. All right, guys. Everybody hit that like button. Really appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for hitting me with your 49ers questions, but subscribing would be great. 49ers quarterbacks and the play action. We talked for almost 40 minutes about it. Hope that you enjoyed the little deep dive. A lot more of this coming as we continue to plow forward through the offseason. Appreciate the support. Talk to you guys all soon. Take care.